On the morning of my 75th birthday, I did something simple, something any mother would do. I baked a small pan of cornbread, put on my Sunday coat, and headed to the family dinner my son said they were hosting for me. But when I walked into that living room, full of balloons, laughter, and people who barely looked my way, everything went silent, because I came in with a black eye. My son didn't rush over. He didn't ask if I was hurt. He just lifted his drink, glanced at his wife, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "My wife taught her some respect." It hit me harder than the shove that caused the bruise. Respect. That word echoed in my chest like a door slamming shut. I stood there, holding that little pan of cornbread, feeling the room turn cold. And in that moment, surrounded by my own family, I realized something I should have seen years ago. They didn't come to celebrate me. They came to show me my place. I turned 75 that Sunday. 75 years of working, raising children, losing a husband, and rebuilding myself more times than I can count. And yet, nothing in all those years prepared me for what happened when I walked into my own birthday dinner. I arrived a little early. The sun was still high, warm on my shoulders as I stepped out of the Uber. I held a small pan of cornbread close to my chest. My husband used to call it my golden pride, because I always saved the first slice for the people I loved most. I wasn't sure if anyone would even want it today, but bringing something homemade made me feel useful, present, like a mother still has a place. Their house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, trimmed hedges, porch light already on, though it was barely 5 p.m. Through the window, I could see silhouettes moving. Kids running, adults setting the table. For a moment, I felt hopeful. Maybe today, for once, we'd be a family again. But the moment the door opened, the energy changed. The chatter fell silent. A fork clattered against a plate. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I stood frozen in the doorway, cornbread cooling in my hands, watching a room full of faces turn toward the one thing I had tried to hide behind makeup and glasses: my black eye. I had dabbed foundation 3 times before I left the house. Thought the oversized sunglasses would cover the swelling. Thought the scarf might help. Nobody was supposed to notice, but they noticed. My daughter-in-law, Sierra, stood by the counter, arms crossed, a smirk just barely tugging her lip. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look guilty. She looked satisfied. My son, Marcus, finally stood from the dining table. He didn't rush toward me like a worried child, didn't ask what happened, didn't check if I needed ice, water, or a seat. He looked at me the way a disappointed manager looks at an employee arriving late, and then, in front of cousins, neighbors, church friends, and even his own children, he raised his glass and said, "My wife taught her some respect." A few people gasped. Someone let out a nervous laugh. But Marcus didn't blink. He meant it. He wanted everyone to hear it. The bruise throbbed once, sharp and hot, as though the words themselves slapped me again. Respect. That word had lived in every fiber of my being for 75 years. I taught Marcus to say, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir." I taught him to hold doors, look people in the eye, speak kindly, apologize with his whole chest when he messed up. And now he used that same word to justify letting his wife put her hands on me. My knees felt weak. I reached for the doorframe to steady myself. Sierra stepped forward, voice sugary sweet. "Oh, don't look at us like that. She needed to learn. Didn't you, Martha?" The room felt smaller, colder. My ears rang. I felt every pair of eyes on me, not one of them stepping between me and humiliation. I lifted the cornbread slightly, almost instinctively, like I was offering peace. But even I could hear how pathetic that gesture was. I lowered it again. Marcus finally walked toward me, but instead of concern, he plucked my sunglasses from my shirt and held them up like evidence. "Next time," he said, low enough only I could hear, "don't run your mouth." My breath caught. It wasn't just the bruise anymore. It was the sentence. A quiet, ugly sentence that turned my stomach. From the living room, one of the grandkids asked loudly, "Grandma, what happened to your face?" Sierra clapped her hands sharply. "Go play in the yard." The kids scattered. Marcus stepped aside as if clearing a path for me, not kindly, but dismissively, like I was an inconvenience blocking the doorway. "Come on," he said. "You're making it awkward." And in that moment, with the smell of roasted chicken filling the house, with balloons shaped like the number 75 floating behind him, with the laughter dying in people's throats, I understood something I had refused to admit for years. I wasn't being celebrated. I was being put in my place. I took one step into the dining room. My hand trembled. The cornbread threatened to slide from my grip. And right there, in the home I helped them pay for, at the dinner meant to honor me, something inside me cracked like dry wood. A quiet, almost invisible crack, but strong enough to change everything that came after. People saw that black eye and thought it came out of nowhere. But bruises never start on the skin. They start years before, quiet, slow, invisible, long before the world notices. Long before Sierra came into the picture, it was just me and Marcus. My husband James passed when Marcus was only 22. Heart failure. We lived in a little brick house on the south side of Atlanta, with a cracked driveway and a porch swing that squeaked every time the wind pushed it. That house was paid off by James and me working 38 straight years. Me in housekeeping at Emory Hospital, him at the post office. When James died, Marcus became my whole world, and I thought I became his. I worked overtime cleaning surgical floors, saving every extra dollar because Marcus had dreams, big ones. College, a car, a wedding someday, a family, a life he said he wanted to give his future wife like the people on TV. I made that my goal. I gave him $500 every month so he wouldn't drown in student loans. When he totaled his first car, I gave him $3,800 from the emergency fund James left behind. When he and Sierra moved together, I paid for their $1,200 deposit and bought their first set of living room furniture. I told myself it wasn't sacrifice. It was motherhood. I didn't care about the long bus rides, the extra shifts, the back pain that made it hard to stand. I just wanted him to have a life easier than mine. Then Sierra arrived. The first time she came to my home, she scanned everything, from the faded curtains to the old photos of James, to the chipped china I kept wrapped in dish towels. She smiled, but her eyes were calculating. She never liked that Marcus still relied on me, never liked that he called me every Sunday, never liked that I had opinions on how my grandchildren should be treated. "She wants to control you," she once whispered to Marcus, when she thought I was out of earshot. "She still thinks you're her little boy." But I ignored it. I told myself, every marriage has adjustments. She just needs time. Love takes patience. Then the little things started. She told me not to pick up the kids from school unless she specifically asked. She started forgetting to invite me to school events. She corrected me at the dinner table, saying, "Kids don't need all that seasoning anymore. We're trying to be healthier." She rearranged my kitchen when she visited, telling me my way was outdated. She told Marcus I was too emotional, too involved, too sensitive. And Marcus, my sweet boy who used to run to the door when I came home from work, stood quieter and quieter each year, his voice fading under hers. Still, I helped them. Every time their lights were late, $210. Every time their car insurance jumped, $180. Every Christmas when money was tight, $300. Every back-to-school season, $400. 15 years of giving. 15 years of, "Don't worry, Mom. We'll pay you back." They never did. But I didn't ask. What I didn't see, what I refused to see, was how that giving built a quiet doorway for disrespect. Every dollar I offered became proof in Sierra's eyes that I owed them more, that I existed to support them, that my boundaries were optional. Marcus changed slowly, like water shaping rock. Not all at once, but enough that one day I realized he didn't ask how my doctor visits went anymore, didn't check if I had enough groceries, didn't remember the anniversary of his father's passing. The boy who used to sit on our porch swing every Saturday morning stopped calling me Mama and switched to Ma in a tone that felt managerial. But the biggest shift came when I moved in with them for 6 months after my hip surgery. I paid them $700 a month for rent, and I bought all the groceries. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week. I helped the kids with homework. I washed laundry when Sierra was too tired. I changed my follow-up appointments to match her schedule. I told myself I was happy to help, but helping isn't the same as being valued. The first time Sierra raised her voice at me over something as small as touching the thermostat, I laughed it off. The second time, when she accused me of interfering with the kids, I apologized even though I hadn't done a thing wrong. The third time, Marcus told me, "Just do what she says, Ma, it's easier." That was the moment the invisible bruises started, because respect doesn't vanish in an explosion. It withers unnoticed, 1 inch at a time. By the time her hand actually hit me, the emotional damage had been happening for years, and on my 75th birthday, standing in front of a room full of people, I realized something devastating. I had given them everything, and they had taken it as permission to give me nothing. The night before my 75th birthday should have been peaceful, quiet, sacred even. But peace has a way of slipping out the back door when disrespect walks through the front. It started with something small, like most disasters do. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chicken soup Sierra asked me to make for the kids' lunches. Marcus was upstairs putting the youngest to bed. The house was calm, warm, still. For a moment, it felt almost normal. But normal doesn't last long around people who think kindness is weakness. Sierra came down the stairs, heels clicking sharp against the wood, holding her phone in one hand like she was gripping evidence. "You called the school again," she snapped before her foot even hit the bottom step. I blinked. "I called to ask what time the choir rehearsal ended. I didn't want the kids waiting outside alone." Her lip curled. "You don't make decisions for my children. You don't call anyone unless I tell you to." "I wasn't making decisions," I said softly. "I just asked." She stepped forward. Fast, too fast. "You don't listen," she shouted, slamming her palm on the counter. "You think you can do whatever you want because you're old and you've raised kids before. Well, this is my house and my family." I held on to the wooden spoon. My hand trembled. "I'm just trying to help." "You're trying to control us," she hissed. She moved closer, the anger in her breath hitting my face. In that moment, I saw something in her eyes. Something sharp, something hungry. Not just anger, power. She liked having power over me. Marcus walked downstairs then, rubbing his eyes, annoyed. "What's going on?" Sierra pointed at me like I was a misbehaving child. "She's calling the school again. She's overstepping. She's starting drama one day before your mother's birthday dinner." Marcus sighed. A heavy, tired sigh. "Ma, just let her handle the school stuff, okay?" I swallowed. "I wasn't doing anything wrong." Sierra crossed her arms. "Of course you weren't. You never do, right? You just create chaos and pretend it's care." Those words stung, not because they were true, but because Marcus didn't defend me. It was the silence that hurt, the kind that stretches like a rubber band pulled too tight. I turned back to the soup, but my vision blurred. The heat from the stove felt suffocating. I needed air. I opened the window. That's when Sierra shoved it shut with one hand. "You don't open windows in my kitchen without asking." The wooden frame slammed inches from my fingers. I stepped back instinctively. She stepped forward. And then, so fast I didn't even register movement, her hand caught the side of my face. Not a slap. Not quite. It was the kind of shove meant to send a message delivered with the heel of the palm. Hard. Sharp. Deliberate. My head snapped sideways. The edge of the cabinet hit my cheekbone. A flash of white, then a pulse of heat exploded under my eye. Marcus shouted, "Sierra!" But Sierra turned to him, unapologetic, chest lifted high. "She needs to stop meddling," she said, as though explaining why she corrected a child's homework. She needs to learn what respect looks like. Respect. Always that word. The room spun. My knees buckled. I reached for the counter to hold myself up. Marcus came toward me but stopped halfway. Stopped, as if torn between two loyalties and chose the wrong one. He didn't take my hand. He didn't ask if I was hurt. He didn't shout at her. He whispered, tired and annoyed, "Ma, please, just stop upsetting her, please." The ache behind my eye pulsed like a heartbeat. Something inside me, something old, deep, and sacred, broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet internal tear, like seams coming undone on a dress worn too many years. I went upstairs without a word, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed they let me use, held a cold washcloth to my face. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. I thought about James, what he would have said if he saw me like this. I thought about the years of giving, forgiving, shrinking myself so Marcus wouldn't have to choose sides. I thought about my own birthday coming in just a few hours and how the people I raised, fed, clothed, bailed out, and protected were the same people hurting me now. I whispered into the darkness. When did I become this? When did I turn into someone they think they can push? And then the real question, why did I let them? I didn't sleep that night, not because of the pain, but because of the awakening. By sunrise, when I looked in the mirror and saw that bruise blooming purple under my eye, something inside me whispered back, enough. When the sun came up on my birthday, the house felt colder than any winter morning I'd ever lived through. Not because of the air, but because of the truth that had finally settled in. I moved slowly, careful with the bruise under my eye. The purple had deepened overnight, spreading like spilled ink. I dabbed concealer over it, layered powder, adjusted my glasses. But even if I could hide the bruise, I couldn't hide what caused it. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. While Sierra and Marcus still slept, I quietly packed the small overnight bag I kept in the closet. My hands didn't shake anymore. I zipped the bag shut, put on my coat, tucked my ID and bank card into my purse, and walked out the front door without leaving a note. The morning light felt different on my skin, sharp, honest, almost cleansing. I didn't go home. I didn't go to a friend's house. I went to the place Sierra never expected me to go, the bank. The lobby was warm, filled with the soft hum of printers and low voices. A young teller with box braids and kind eyes smiled at me. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" I took a long breath and steadied myself on the counter. "I need to change some things," I said. "A few accounts, and I'd like to stop some automatic transfers." The teller tapped gently on her keyboard. "Of course. Which transfers would you like to cancel?" I swallowed hard. The number sat at the tip of my tongue, heavy with years of sacrifice. "The monthly $500 I've been sending to my son." Her eyebrows lifted a little, not judgmental, just surprised. "How long have those transfers been going on?" 12 years, I whispered, "every month, without missing one." "All right," she said softly. "We can cancel them immediately." Immediately. That word stretched through me like sunlight touching a room that hadn't been opened in years. "Also," I said, "I want to change the passwords for all online access, and I'd like to remove any authorized users." The teller shook her head. "There are none on file besides you. All good." So even after Sierra had pushed and pushed, she hadn't managed to get her hands on my accounts. That small victory lifted something in my chest. Next, I asked for new bank cards. Then I opened a second savings account, something just for me, something untouched, unnamed, unnoticed. As I signed the forms, the teller looked at me with a tenderness that made my throat tight. "Are you safe, ma'am?" It was the first time in months someone had asked me that. I nodded. "I will be." When I stepped back outside, the breeze brushed my cheek, Softer than a hand, but stronger than any apology Marcus could have offered. I didn't go back to their house. I called a Lyft and headed to my own small apartment, the one I'd been keeping since the hip surgery, just in case. Inside, the rooms were quiet, empty, waiting. I sat on the couch and exhaled a long, shaky breath. Not fear, relief. My phone buzzed around 10:30 a.m. Marcus calling. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. A few minutes later, a text arrived from Sierra. "Where are you? You're supposed to be here early to help with setup." I typed slowly. "I won't be coming early. Handle it yourselves." A minute passed, then 5, then 10. My phone vibrated again. "Martha, we need you here. The kids are hungry and Marcus wants to talk." I didn't respond. Instead, I stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the quiet parking lot. For the first time, I didn't feel trapped by responsibility. I felt unhooked. At noon, a final message came. "You're being selfish. Selfish. After paying rent, groceries, school supplies, car repairs, medical bills, and bailing them out more times than I could count." I breathed in slowly and typed only 5 words. "I don't owe you anything." Then I put the phone down and let the silence fill the room. A firm, clean silence, not heavy, but freeing. That was the first moment I realized something important. Cutting money wasn't about punishing them. It was about releasing myself. It was the first step toward reclaiming the life they thought they owned. You learn a lot about people when you stop giving them something they were never entitled to in the first place. I had just finished my first cup of tea in my own quiet kitchen when my phone erupted like an alarm. Marcus's name flashed across the screen 5 times in a row. Then Sierra's, then Marcus again. I didn't pick up. Heck. After the 6th call, a voicemail appeared. Marcus's voice, tight, clipped, irritated. "Ma, what's going on? Sierra said you're acting strange. We need to talk. Call me back. Now." Strange. It always amazed me how people who mistreated you suddenly labeled you the problem the moment you stopped allowing it. A second voicemail followed immediately, Sierra's voice this time, trembling, theatrical, soaked in manufactured worry. "Martha, we're just concerned. You left without saying anything and the kids are upset. Can you please come back? We need you here." Concerned. That word slid off her tongue like oil on water. Shiny, but it never soaked into anything real. Then the messages began, one after another, rapid fire. Sierra, "Where's the cornbread? You were supposed to bring it." Marcus, "This is childish." Sierra, "You know we depend on that transfer. The rent is due tomorrow." Marcus, "Seriously, Ma? You picked today to act like this?" Every text had the same undertone. Not love, not worry. Panic, because the money stopped. By 1 p.m., they weren't pretending anymore. Sierra called again, this time not bothering to hide the edge in her voice. "Are you really doing this? After everything we've done for you?" I almost laughed. Everything they'd done for me. What exactly was on that list? Sierra didn't wait for my answer. She kept talking. Words tumbling out fast, her anger slipping through like cracks in drywall. "You can't just pull money like that. We have bills. The kids need stuff. Marcus counted on you. You know that." There it was, the truth, raw, unfiltered, exposed. I had stopped being a mother to them a long time ago. I was a resource, a walking wallet, an emergency fund, a woman whose kindness they mistook for obligation. When I didn't take her bait, Sierra's tone changed, fast. The performance dropped. The real woman behind the polite Sunday smile finally came out. "You better not embarrass us today," she hissed. "Everyone's coming. If you don't show up for your own birthday dinner, it'll make us look crazy." And there it was again. Make us look crazy. Not, "We care about you." Not, "We're worried." Not, "Are you okay?" Just image. Presentation, optics. That's all I had ever been, a prop in their picture-perfect life. I calmly replied, "I'll come, but I won't be early." 5 minutes later, Marcus called again. This time with anger he wasn't even trying to hide. "Ma, what the hell's going on? Sierra's upset, the kids are confused, and you're messing up the whole day." I stayed silent. He exhaled hard, the way he used to when his video game froze as a kid. "You can't just change stuff without telling us." "The money is mine," I finally said. There was a long pause, a pause so heavy I could feel him recalculating how to speak to me now that the leverage had shifted. "Yeah, but you've always helped," he said. It's what you do." "No," I corrected gently. "It's what I chose, and now I choose differently." Marcus's voice grew tight, not shaky, not hurt, just threatened. "Ma, you can't put me in this position. We're behind on the car insurance. The electricity is due Friday. Sierra's paycheck is short this month. You know we need your help." "And I needed respect," I replied softly. "Seems we're both missing something." He inhaled sharply, offended, shocked, more by my tone than by my words. "Are you trying to punish us?" "No," I said. "I'm trying to protect myself." Before he could respond, I ended the call. For the next hour, my phone vibrated like a dying engine. Calls, texts, guilt, manipulation, fear tactics dressed up as concern. They were scrambling, unglued, unprepared for the day I finally stopped speaking their language of compliance. Because toxic people don't fear losing you. They fear losing control of you, and for the first time in a long, long while. I wasn't under their control anymore. After the flood of calls, after the guilt-tinged messages, after the anger and the panic, came silence. A strange, eerie silence. The kind that sits on your shoulders and asks, "What now?" I sat on my small couch, the hum of my old refrigerator filling the room. My eyes still throbbed, but the ache felt different now. Less like a wound, and more like a warning. A reminder. A truth I could no longer ignore. I needed help. Not money, not forgiveness, not a hug or a prayer circle. I needed protection. I needed language for what had been happening. I needed someone who would call that bruise exactly what it was. Not a misunderstanding, not an accident, not family tension. I needed someone who understood what Sierra and Marcus pretended not to see. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up my phone and called Linda Coleman. Linda wasn't a friend. She was more than that. We met at church years ago, back when I still volunteered for food drives and choir rehearsals. She was quiet, composed, the kind of woman whose silence made people sit up straighter. But Linda's real strength wasn't in the pews. It was in the courtroom. She was a retired family law attorney specializing in elder rights. She answered on the second ring. "Martha? Baby, I haven't heard from you in months. Everything all right?" Something about the word baby almost made me cry. I swallowed the feeling. No, everything's not all right. Her tone shifted instantly, from warm to razor sharp. "Where are you?" "In my apartment." "Good. Stay there. I'm coming." "Linda, you don't have to—" She cut me off. "Text me the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to her word, she arrived exactly 22 minutes later, holding a leather notebook and wearing the same no-nonsense expression she used when she interrogated the deacon board that one time. She stepped inside, took one look at my face, and said quietly, "Who did this to you?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. The shame rose up like smoke. She didn't push. She simply patted the couch. "Sit. Talk when you can." And for the first time in what felt like years, I spoke honestly about the years of helping, about the slow slide from gratitude to expectation, about Sierra's controlling tone, about Marcus's silence, about the night before, about the bruise, about the words he said at the party. My wife taught her some respect. When I finished, the room was quiet. Linda closed her notebook slowly. "Martha," she said, "this is not family drama. This is not disrespect. This is not kids being kids. This is elder financial abuse and domestic intimidation. And that bruise, that is assault." I looked down at my hands. They shook. She leaned closer. "You are not crazy. You are not dramatic. You are not overreacting. You have been mistreated, manipulated, and used for years." The relief hit me so hard my shoulders sank. Someone finally named it. Someone finally said out loud what I had been too scared to admit. Linda flipped open her notebook. "Here's what we're going to do." Her voice became steady, methodical. The tone of a woman who had rescued more than a few mothers and grandmothers from situations just like mine. "First, we document everything. Dates, texts, payments, injuries. Every dollar you ever gave them. This gives us a paper trail." I nodded, wiping a tear. "Second," she continued, "you are not to speak to them alone. Not in person, not on the phone. Everything goes through me. Okay? Third, we go to urgent care. We need photos of that bruise taken by a medical professional." I hesitated. "Is that really necessary?" She fixed me with a look that felt like a hand on my spine, holding me upright. "Martha, if a stranger had done this to you, you would have called the police. The only thing making you hesitate is the word family, and that word has protected them long enough." I closed my eyes. She was right. And painful as it was, truth always sounds like that. "Fourth," Linda added, "we prepare for retaliation. When you cut people off financially, especially people who relied on your silence, they panic. They lash out. They lie. They create stories." My breath caught. I suddenly remembered the voicemail Sierra left exactly 2 weeks ago, accusing me of instability when I asked for receipts for groceries. As if reading my mind, Linda said, "They'll try to flip the script. They always do." Her certainty steadied me. "But Martha," she added softly, "you are not alone. I'm going to walk you through this, step by step." A warmth spread through me, unfamiliar but welcome. Hope. She stood. "Get your coat. It's time to make a report and get that bruise photographed." For the first time since the shove, since the bruise, since the birthday dinner humiliation, since the years of silent sacrifice, I felt protected. I felt seen. And for the first time, I felt dangerous. Toxic people don't crumble when you stand up. They escalate. And Sierra? She didn't just escalate, she launched a full offensive. It started the morning after my urgent care visit. Linda had taken careful photos of my bruise with time-stamped documentation. The doctor wrote, "Suspected assault." And when asked if I wanted to involve authorities, Linda answered for me, "Not yet. We will when it counts." I thought that meant things would calm down. But when you pull away someone's financial lifeline, you don't get calm. You get chaos. At 9:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message that nearly made me drop it. "A wellness check has been requested for you. Police will be by shortly." From Sierra, a wellness check, a tactic abusers use when they want to paint an elder as unstable, so they can claim guardianship, control finances, and justify protective oversight. My heart thudded, but Linda had warned me. They're going to try to make you look unwell, confused, or mentally declining. They'll frame you as the problem. 5 minutes later, a knock came at my door. 2 officers, hands polite, voices calm. "Ma'am, we received a call from family. They said you've been acting erratically and may be in danger." Linda, who had intentionally stayed with me overnight, stepped forward like a shield. "Officers, my client is fine. She is the victim here, not the perpetrator, and we have medical documentation of an assault." The officers exchanged looks. When they saw my eye, the bruise now a deep plum, their posture changed. They took notes. They asked questions. They apologized for disturbing me. When the door closed behind them, Linda sighed. That was the first strike. There will be more. She was right. By noon, Sierra had posted a long, syrupy Facebook message. "Please pray for Marcus's mom. She's been confused lately and acting unlike herself. We're doing everything we can to help her." Confused, unlike herself. The comments poured in. People who didn't know me, who had met me twice at most, said things like, "Praying for her mind. Aging is so hard. You and Marcus are such good kids to care for her." Good kids, if only they knew. But Sierra wasn't done. At 2:47 p.m., Linda received an email forwarded from the county's guardianship office. Marcus and Sierra had officially filed for temporary guardianship over me. Guardianship, the legal equivalent of stripping away my autonomy, my rights, and every dollar I owned. It meant they would control my bank accounts, my medical decisions, even where I lived. They wanted everything. Linda's jaw tightened as she skimmed the documents. "They're claiming cognitive decline," she muttered, "and Sierra submitted a statement claiming you hallucinate and wander at night." I felt sick. I had never hallucinated a day in my life. Linda continued. "They also said you've been forgetting to eat and misplacing objects in dangerous ways. Classic elder abuse manipulation." I swallowed hard. How can they lie like that? Because they expect you to be too scared to fight back. But they didn't realize who I had sitting beside me. Linda looked up with a fire I had only glimpsed before. "We're filing a counter-petition today." The rest of the afternoon turned into a flurry of defensive strategy, compiling medical records proving I had no cognitive issues, downloading texts showing Sierra's hostility, printing 12 years of financial transfers I had made to support them, gathering witness statements from neighbors who heard Sierra yelling, preparing a formal declaration about the shove that caused my injury. Linda typed with the precision of a woman who had dismantled liars for decades. Every click of her keyboard felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then came the knock that made the air tighten. Marcus. Not shouting, not angry. His voice came through the door like forced calm. "Ma, can we talk? Please?" Linda whispered. "Do not open that door." I stayed silent. Marcus continued. "Sierra just wants what's best. We're worried about you. You're not thinking straight." Linda squeezed my hand. There it was. The script, the gaslighting, the coordinated performance. When I didn't answer, his tone shifted, quick, sharp, almost desperate. "Ma, if you had just kept things normal, none of this would have happened. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I felt something crack inside me again. But this time, it wasn't pain. It was clarity. Linda stepped forward, speaking loud enough for him to hear. "Marcus, all communication will go through legal channels from now on. Any further attempts to contact, intimidate, or manipulate my client will be documented." Silence, then hurried footsteps, then a car door. He fled. Linda turned to me. "This is the storm before the victory. Don't bend, not now." And for the first time in my long, heartbreaking journey with my own child, I realized something powerful. I wasn't bending anymore. Not for them. Not for fear. Not for family. Not ever again. After Marcus ran from my doorstep, Linda closed the blinds, locked the door, and let out a breath like she'd been holding it for hours. "That was their first real attempt to intimidate you," she said calmly. "It won't be their last, which means now we build your shield." Her voice carried a steadiness I hadn't felt in years, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the room shift in my favor. She sat at my dining table, opened her worn leather notebook, and said, "Abusers rely on silence. We're about to make noise." She slid a stack of my bank statements in front of me. Years and years of transfers I had called help, support, just this once, and Mama's got you. But when I started circling each payment, each loan, each bill I silently covered, the truth bled through the page. 12 years of monthly $500 transfers, rent payments when they were short, car repairs, light bills, school supplies, vacation money, unpaid payday loans. Even the $3,800 I'd given Marcus from James's emergency fund years ago. It looked like a lifetime of generosity. But on paper, It looked like exploitation. "This isn't kindness," Linda said softly. "This is a pattern, and patterns are legally powerful." The words stung, but for once the sting felt like clarity. Next came the witnesses. People I never realized had been watching all along. Mrs. Green, the neighbor across from Marcus's house, picked up the phone on the first ring. "Baby, I've heard things in that house," she said. "I've seen you walk out looking like your spirit's been stepped on. Whatever you need from me, you got it." Then Miss Ruby from church texted to say she remembered Sierra shoving past me during the Christmas event. My former co-worker Sharon called and admitted she'd always noticed how sharp Marcus spoke to me. Even my apartment manager said she would vouch that I was clear-minded and fully independent. It was overwhelming, not because people were finally speaking, but because I realized they had been waiting for me to stop pretending nothing was wrong. Linda then printed a page of legal and psychological terms and slid it toward me like a mirror. Elder neglect, coercive control, financial exploitation, psychological manipulation, physical assault, threatened autonomy. For years, I had reduced my pain to tiny phrases like, "It's fine," "They didn't mean it," "They're stressed," or "I don't want to cause trouble." But the right words change everything. Naming something gives it edges, and edges can defend you. Reading those terms out loud felt like unlocking a door I didn't know I had the key to. By late afternoon, Linda organized everything we'd gathered. The bank statements, the witness declarations, the medical photos of my bruise, the timeline of events, the text messages, the documentation showing my stability, into neat, manila folders. My little dining table, the same one where I used to shell peas with my grandmother, now looked like a quiet war room. But for the first time, I wasn't standing in that room alone. Linda placed her hand on mine gently and said, "Martha, everything they thought would break you, your age, your kindness, your silence, stops today. You're not behind anymore. You're ahead." The room felt warmer. The air is lighter. For years, I had been shrinking myself so they wouldn't feel threatened. For years, I had been convincing myself I was overreacting. But sitting there, surrounded by proof, by truth, by a community that chose to stand with me, I felt something rise inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time. Strength. Real strength. Not loud, not angry. The quiet kind that stands its ground. And as Linda closed the final folder, I realized something powerful. I was finally ready for whatever came next. The courthouse hallway was colder than I expected, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the silence. That kind of heavy, humming silence where you can feel everyone's nerves pressing against the walls. Linda walked beside me, steady and composed, carrying a folder thick enough to change the course of a life. My life. "This is where they expect you to crumble," she whispered as we approached the courtroom door. "Don't give them that satisfaction." I nodded, though my knees felt loose. Not weak, just alive, trembling with everything I had carried for years. When the doors opened, the room was already half full, and there they were. Marcus and Sierra sat at the petitioner's table like a couple posing for a church directory photo. Back straight, hands folded, pretending they were the worried caretakers of a fragile old woman. Sierra had even pulled her hair back into a neat bun, her face bare of makeup to create a wholesome, innocent look. She wore beige. Beige. The color people choose when they want to seem gentle. Marcus looked tired in that way guilt never admits but always shows. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Their lawyer, a tall man with a loud suit, stood confidently with a stack of papers, their case, their lies. When I sat down beside Linda, Sierra leaned toward Marcus and whispered something. They both glanced at me. I recognized that look, the same one Sierra gave me in the kitchen the night she shoved me, the look of someone who thought they had already won. But they didn't know what Linda carried in that folder. The judge entered, a stern woman with sharp glasses and a calm, cutting voice. She adjusted her robe, glanced at the paperwork, and said, "All right, let's hear the petition for temporary guardianship over Mrs. Martha Edwards." Temporary guardianship over me, over everything I owned, over every breath I was allowed to make. Their lawyer launched into his opening like he had rehearsed it in the mirror. "Your Honor, my clients are deeply worried about Mrs. Edwards. She has shown signs of confusion, instability, and emotional volatility. They are concerned she may pose a risk to herself. They are simply trying to protect her." Sierra lowered her head and dabbed an imaginary tear from the corner of her eye. The lawyer continued, "Furthermore, there is a pattern of erratic communication, impulsive decisions, and—" He paused dramatically. "Possible cognitive decline." Something hot rose in my chest, but Linda placed her hand gently on my wrist. "Let him finish," she whispered. Then came Sierra's performance. She stood when the lawyer gestured, clasping her hands like a martyr. "I love Martha," she began softly, "but lately, she's just not herself. She forgets things. She gets confused at night. She accused me of things I would never do. We just want her safe." My jaw tightened. Marcus then delivered his lines. "Ma's always been strong," he said, voice shaking in that rehearsed, manipulative way. "But this past year, I don't know, she's been withdrawing money randomly. She disappears. She sent strange messages. We're scared for her. We just want her taken care of." Every sentence was a lie, but lies spoken calmly often sound like the truth. Linda waited until they were completely done, until they had wrapped their deceit in enough fake concern to fill the room, before she rose. And when Linda rose, the energy changed. She didn't adjust her jacket. She didn't ask permission to speak. She walked to the center like she owned the floor. "Your Honor," she began, "what you've heard today is fiction so poorly constructed it would insult a paperback novel." The judge blinked. Surprised but not offended, Linda opened the folder slowly, deliberately. "Let's start with the most important piece, medical documentation." She held up photographs, clear, time-stamped, taken in urgent care, Masaha, of my black eye. "Injuries consistent with a blunt force shove," she said, "the kind of injury no 75-year-old woman gives herself while confused." Marcus shifted in his chair. Sierra froze. Linda then placed papers on the judge's desk. "This is Mrs. Edwards' cognitive evaluation from Emory Healthcare. She passed every test: memory, orientation, reasoning, and executive functioning, with scores well above the average for her age group. There is zero evidence of cognitive decline. Zero." The judge nodded slowly. "And now," Linda continued, "let's talk about financial patterns." She laid out the bank statements. 12 years of consistent financial support. Over $68,000 has been given to the petitioners. Not a single repayment. Not a single thank you. This is not a declining mind. This is a generous mother exploited. Sierra's face tightened. Her fingers curled. Linda's voice sharpened. Next, witness statements. Multiple neighbors, church members, and community members have documented seeing Mrs. Edwards being spoken to harshly, pushed aside, or treated dismissively by the petitioners. Then came the final blow. "And lastly, Your Honor, we have a recording." My breath caught. Linda pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom. "If you had just kept things normal, none of this would have happened." Then Sierra's, "You better not embarrass us. You owe us." The room shifted. The judge leaned forward. Even the clerk blinked hard. Linda closed the folder. "This is not caretaking," she said. "This is coercion, intimidation, exploitation, control, and now retaliation." Silence fell so thick you could have sliced it. The judge removed her glasses. "I've heard enough." My heart thundered. She turned to Marcus and Sierra. "Petition denied, permanently. And I strongly advise the petitioners to refrain from further contact unless invited. Any future attempts to claim guardianship will be met with investigation." Sierra gasped like she'd been slapped. Marcus slumped back in his seat, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt free, not hopeful, not relieved, free. When the judge slammed that gavel down, it didn't just echo through the courtroom, it echoed through every corner of their lives, people like Marcus and Sierra. They don't collapse all at once. They unravel piece by piece, and the unraveling started immediately. As we exited the courtroom, Sierra rushed after Marcus, whispering harshly under her breath. Her face had lost that soft beige innocence she'd worn like a costume. The mask slipped, revealing the person I'd known behind closed doors, sharp, frantic, angry. Marcus didn't look at me, not once. He just stormed toward the exit, shoulders stiff, moving like a man whose world had cracked in places he didn't expect. Linda touched my arm gently. "Let's go. They'll spin out on their own." And they did. The financial cracks started first. 2 days after the hearing, I got a message from a mutual family friend. "Did you know their electricity got shut off?" No, I didn't. But I wasn't surprised. For years, my money had quietly kept that house alive. Without it, the overdue bills began surfacing like debris after a storm. The electric bill is past due. The car insurance is unpaid. The credit card they used for groceries maxed out. Late fees piling up. Their rent is behind by 2 full months. Sierra tried posting on Facebook about unexpected financial hardships, but people weren't as quick to show sympathy this time. Word from the courtroom had spread, and empathy has a way of drying up when the truth comes out. Their marriage began to fracture a week later. Miss Ruby called me. "You didn't hear it from me, but they've been screaming at each other in that driveway. Loud, real loud." It made sense. Their unity had always depended on having a common enemy. Once their target, me, stepped out of the line of fire and into the light, they turned on each other. Marcus blamed Sierra for pushing the guardianship case too hard. Sierra blamed Marcus for not controlling me sooner. Both blamed each other for losing the money they thought would always flow. Without me to blame, they only had each other. The community turned cold at church. People whispered, not about me, about them. One woman told Linda she overheard Sierra bragging months ago about getting the house in her name soon. That same woman now avoided her in the parking lot. Marcus stopped attending services altogether. He couldn't stand the eyes on him, the ones that finally saw him clearly. A man from the neighborhood told me, "Marcus has been snapping at everyone lately. That temper is showing." Their shiny image, the one they polished for years, was cracking like old paint. The job trouble followed. The final blow came 2 weeks later. Marcus called, not to apologize, not to confess, not to repair anything. His voice was flat, thin, tired. "Ma, I lost my job." I didn't respond. I waited. "They said I've been distracted. Late. My performance tanked. They let me go." I could hear Sierra yelling in the background, blaming him, blaming me, blaming the universe. Marcus sighed. "You don't have anything to say?" I finally spoke. "Actions have consequences, Marcus." Silence. Then the call dropped. I didn't hear from him again. The most important part, I didn't have to hurt them back. Their downfall didn't come from me. It came from the weight of their own choices. Choices I no longer carried for them. Sierra tried to secure a babysitting job to make quick money, but no one hired her. Too many people knew too much now. Marcus applied for work, but employers called his references. And the truth about his recent behavior trickled out. They weren't villains in a story. They were adults living with the cost of what they'd done. And I didn't need revenge. Life handled it. All I needed was distance. One evening, Linda and I sat on my small balcony drinking sweet tea. She looked out over the quiet street and said, "You did the hardest part, Martha. You chose yourself." I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had regained. Peace, dignity, a voice, a home where my bruises no longer bloomed. The consequences in their lives weren't my doing. They were simply the shadows cast by the truth. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel sad for them. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel responsible. I felt free. When the dust settled, I found myself in a kind of quiet I hadn't known in decades. Not the lonely kind, not the frightened kind, but the kind that lets you hear your own breathing again. The kind that makes you realize how long you've been holding your breath. For the first time in years, I woke up without flinching at footsteps in the hallway. I woke up in my own little apartment, sunlight spilling through soft curtains I chose myself. No yelling, no tension, no fear of what mood she's in today. No calculating which words would keep the peace. Just me. Just peace. It felt strange at first. The kind of strange that happens when freedom returns after being gone too long. I started small. I bought a new pair of walking shoes. I took morning walks around the senior community garden, breathing in air that didn't carry anyone else's expectations. Neighbors waved. Some walked beside me. One woman, Miss Eloise, handed me a cutting from her rose bush and said, "For your new beginning, baby." I planted it on my balcony. It took root, just like I did. I rebuilt my life in ways I didn't expect. I joined a quilting group at the community center. A circle of older women who laughed loud, told stories even louder, and welcomed me with open arms. We stitched colors together the way some people stitch back pieces of themselves. Each quilt square I completed felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. On Thursdays, I went to the senior dance nights. Nothing fancy, just Motown, a few old records spinning, hips swaying the way they used to before life got heavy. I hadn't danced in years, but the moment I stepped onto that floor, something clicked back into place. I remembered who I was before the weight of everyone's needs settled on my spine. I remembered joy. I traveled. Not far, but far enough Linda insisted I take a short trip, even if just for a weekend. "Go somewhere where nobody knows you," she said. "Let the world remind you who you can be." So I booked a small cabin outside Savannah. Just me. A porch swing. A river nearby. I drank coffee in silence, listened to birds, read books I never finished, and wrote in a journal. Something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I wrote about the girl I used to be, the woman I became, and the woman I was learning to grow into. I wrote about peace. I wrote about being 75 and still learning. I wrote about healing, slow but real. I let love back in. The good kind. Not romantic love, but love from people who weren't trying to take from me. Miss Ruby came by with homemade peach cobbler. My neighbor's granddaughter braided my hair one afternoon saying, "You look cute, Miss Martha." Linda checked on me weekly, sometimes with legal updates, sometimes with soup. I didn't realize how starved I had been for gentle care, how much I had given without ever receiving. Now, kindness found its way back to me. Not because I earned it or paid for it or suffered for it, but simply because I existed. I learned to enjoy solitude. For years, I was scared of being alone. I stayed in a toxic household because I thought silence would swallow me whole. But silence didn't swallow me. It healed me. I cooked meals for one. Little plates of comfort food seasoned exactly how I liked it. I played my old records without anybody mocking my taste. I watched sunsets from my balcony, breathing out things that didn't belong to me anymore. Sometimes I cried, not from sadness, but from release. The kind of crying that washes years off your shoulders. And then, the most unexpected gift of all one afternoon, while I was at the community garden, a little girl tugged on my sleeve. She couldn't have been more than 5. "You look happy," she said simply, like stating the weather. Happy. The word felt foreign and perfectly right. "I am," I whispered, truly, deeply, finally, in the quiet of my new life, among plants, fabric, music, and good people. I understood something I never believed before. Being alone has never been the danger. Being unloved in a house full of people is the real loneliness, and I chose myself. At 75, I chose peace, and peace chose me back. 6 months after the courtroom, 6 months after the shouting, the betrayal, the bruise, the silence, the breaking and unbreaking of myself, I found a peace I never thought could belong to a woman like me. Not because life suddenly became easy, not because people suddenly changed, but because I did. Age doesn't soften you. Age reveals you. And at 75, I finally saw myself clearly. One quiet evening, I sat on my balcony with a cup of chamomile tea, warming my hands. The sky was painted in soft purples and golds, the kind of sunset that makes you believe the world is still capable of gentleness. A light breeze moved through my hair, brushing away the last traces of a life I no longer belonged to. I realized then, the bruise healed long before my heart did. And my heart healed the moment I accepted a truth I had run from for years. Love without respect is not love. It's ownership, and I do not belong to anyone. Not anymore. For the first time in decades, my life felt like mine. Not borrowed, not controlled, not shaped to fit someone else's comfort, just mine. Quiet, honest, whole. I thought about Marcus, my boy, who once held my hand crossing the street, who once cried into my shoulder when he scraped his knee. I thought about how life had twisted him into a man who forgot where he came from, who forgot the hands that fed him, who forgot the woman who lifted him through every storm. But I also knew something deep in my bones. You cannot save someone who refuses to see their own reflection. And I wasn't put on this earth to rescue grown people from their own choices. I prayed for him, not for reconciliation, but for awakening. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you love, stop letting them hurt you. I looked around my little apartment, my sanctuary, filled with quilts in progress, pots of green plants, photos of better days pinned to the fridge, a candle burning low on the table. A life with softness, a life with choice, a life I built after I walked away. And that's when the truth hit me. I didn't escape a family. I escaped a prison made of loyalty. I set my tea down, took a deep breath, and whispered into the quiet, I'm 75 years old, and I finally understand that my dignity is not negotiable. It felt like a declaration, a vow, a promise to the girl I once was, and to the woman I am now. I thought about the women who might hear my story. Women who are 60, 70, 80. Women who think it's too late. Women who think suffering is love. Women who think peace is something for other people, not them. To them, to anyone listening, I say this. You are not too old to start saying no. You are not too old to protect your peace. You are not too old to walk away from people who hurt you. You are not too old to begin again. You can be 75 and still be reborn. You can be 80 and still choose freedom. You can be 90 and still demand respect. Age does not trap you. Fear does. And when you lose that fear, even for a moment, the world opens like a door you never noticed was unlocked. So let me end with the truth that changed my life. Being alone will never break you, but staying where you are not valued will. And now I turn to you. Whoever you are, wherever you are listening from, have you ever been hurt by the very people you raised? Have you ever lowered your voice just to keep the peace? Have you ever stayed too long in a place that did not deserve you? I hope my story permits you to pause, to breathe, to choose yourself. Because peace is not something you find. It's something you claim. And when you finally claim it, the whole world softens around you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever lived through something similar, you're not alone. Share your truth, tell your story, and take your peace back. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you're listening right now, I want you to hear something clearly. Something I wish someone had told me years ago. You are allowed to reclaim your life at any age. You are allowed to draw a line, even if the world tells you it's too late. You are allowed to choose peace over people who break you. If any part of my journey reminded you of your own, know this: you are not weak, you are not dramatic, and you are not imagining things. Sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones that come from the people we love the most, and sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. So I hope my story gives you courage, even a little, to speak up, to set boundaries, or simply to admit that you deserve better. Because you do. Every one of us does. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Have you ever had to choose yourself the way I did? Share your truth in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need strength today. Thank you truly for listening. Take care of yourself. Take your peace back.